Hello and welcome to another episode of EOB TV. This time around it's UFC 129 as we go to the fine city of Toronto. UFC 129, it will be the largest North American audience, 55,000 people in attendance to check out George St-Pierre and Jake Shields go mano-a-mano. Jake Shields, a champ in a bunch of different organizations, 15-fight win streak over 6 years. Super impressive. He is super sick on the ground and his striking gets better and better every time he steps in the cage. George St-Pierre, as you know, welterweight phenom. He has been called the future of the division. Then he was called the all-time pound-for-pound best, now that the argument between he and Anderson Silva, one that we may or may not settle after this fight. Things to look for is both men like to press the action. They like to get their opponent on their heels, because if the guy is coming backwards, it's really hard for him to set up his game plan. As you saw in the Koscheck fight, as soon as George, boom, pops him right in the eye, breaks that orbital, it changes, number one, the dimension of the fighter, number two, Koscheck was on his heels the entire rest of the 5 rounds, which made it really hard for him to get off any action and attack George St-Pierre. When it comes to takedowns, this is where it gets really fascinating. Jake Shields is a jiu-jitsu phenom, high-level Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, and George St-Pierre's wrestling is top-notch. Let's not forget that Jake Shields also out-wrestled Olympian Dan Henderson. So this could be very, very, very fun to watch these two try to get it to the ground and which one ends up on top. I'm telling you, if Jake Shields ends up on top, it's going to be very, very dangerous for George St-Pierre. That's the dimension of the fight that George needs to avoid if he wants to continue his domination in the welterweight and, let's face it, the mixed martial arts universe. It's hard for me to go against George St-Pierre because every time I go against George St-Pierre, he ends up winning anyway. So I'm going to pick George, even though I think this is going to be a very, very fun fight to watch. In the featherweight division, you have Jose Aldo taking on Mark Hominick. Jose, you remember, took on Uriah Faber, blasted him in the leg for the entire fight, to a level that it was so dangerous for Uriah's leg, it was almost black, that they thought it was going to be a blood clot that would shoot up to his brain and cause some serious damage. It didn't. He fought last month. You know he's okay. The point is, Jose Aldo can blast you away with those leg kicks. He's ended fights in 9 seconds with double knees to the face. He's an extremely devastating and dangerous striker, taking on an extremely accurate and dangerous striker in Mark Hominick. The interesting part of this fight is not only do their styles clash a little bit, as Jose Aldo is a world champion Brazilian jiu-jitsu artist, but Hominick is extremely, extremely accurate with those punches, which means if he can get a hold of Jose Aldo either on the run or catch him up against the cage, it might be an interesting fight for Jose Aldo to fight his way out of. That said, as fast as Hominick is, and as much as he's been on this streak, he really hasn't fought anyone like Jose Aldo. So I don't think Jose is in any danger of losing his title on Saturday night. I think it's going to be a fun fight to watch as they stand in the middle and bang. But ultimately, I think the explosiveness and the devastation of Jose Aldo is going to be the dismantling of Mark Hominick's 5-fight win streak. And the final fight I want to talk about is Lyoto Machida and Randy Couture. Randy is in the twilight of his career and has been for many, 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 many years. It seems like every fight we talk about, he's in the twilight of his career. He's taking on Lyoto Machida. Lyoto has lost a controversial decision to Rampage Jackson in Detroit and lost his title to Shogun the second time he faced it. Shogun went on to lose it to John Jones, as you're well aware. This fight is dangerous for Randy if he cannot keep the fight close. And even if he can keep the fight close, Lyoto has dangerous judo and karate where he can just toss Randy on his head. I'm not saying it's going to be easy to toss Randy on his head because of his wrestling background, but as you saw with the Rampage fight, Lyoto certainly can get the guys to the ground, which is not where Randy Couture wants to be. He does not want to fight off his back. He does not want to try and keep getting this fight up on the feet. What he wants to do is close that distance, make sure he does not stay in no man's land where Lyoto can strike from that weird back pose that he does. He does not want to stay there. What he wants to do, close the gap, get it up against the cage, grind it out, do some dirty boxing, and he take the fight to the ground and end up on top. If he can do that, I think he can at least win a decision in this fight, which would be 2 bad decision losses for Lyoto Machida and puts him in peril, I think, in the UFC, since he can't actually get the loss to Randy Couture back this weekend. However, if he wins, I'm not sure that does much to elevate his profile in the UFC other than get him a win after 2 losses. But I'm going to pick Randy anyway because it's Randy. You got to pick Randy. Catch all of the action on Saturday night on pay-per-view. And follow us on Twitter, it's @WowShow, or Facebook, it's @WowShow. It's Way of the Warrior. We'll see you next week.